Good day everyone, so I'm revisiting a completely F2P team that I sort of showcased in April earlier this year, and this team obviously consists of Sucrose, Fischl, Barbara and Diona, and of course with the latest Spiral Abyss, the first halves are very AoE heavy, so you've got lots of enemies, so a team like this can really excel. Obviously in single target a team like this just completely falls flat, but it's going to be interesting to sort of see how they can do and exactly how tight you have to be with how you play, how you group your rotations and so on in order to get the most out of it. But I think you would agree that the clearing times will be more or less acceptable, I think, for most people. If you do stay tuned, then right at the end we'll sort of compare how this team actually then sort of functions with Kokomi instead of Barbara, which will be quite interesting. Right, so right off the bat, we just want to sort of get a bit of a freeze going here. Obviously, Oz and Fischl on the field, and now we have all of these enemies. We can group them up, and this is just where the beauty of just Genshin Impact reactions start taking place. Quickly going to refresh the Oz, and now just a quick Q on Barbara so we can get the maximum clam damage. You can see here we hit all those enemies for about 30k. So if the floor had like a, let's say the total health pool of all the enemies was like 1 million, you as Barbara just did about like 120k damage. It is actually insane how wonderfully useful Ocean U Clam is, especially in an AoE. You can get so much damage. And yeah, as you guys can see, it just through carefully playing, carefully sort of managing the enemies, we pretty consistently, very evenly got both of their healths like down, and now we're just sort of trying to manage it. Hopefully Ocean U Clam set can double pop both of them out. There we go, both of them are gone, and yes, you did see that 35k due to the superconduct. And now we've got one enemy left, so what do we do with one enemy and a bit of time on the clock? Well, we just start charging our elemental burst for the next floor. So I do think a clearing time of about 850-ish is sort of, I think, acceptable for most people, especially for an F2P team. So let's go on to the next floor. On this floor, there's no real strategy. You just need to make sure that the dinosaurs don't group or get too far apart, because they've got very high health pools, and it is difficult for this team to make up that DPS loss. So you want to ensure that you can get as many reactions in an AoE area as possible, and this is by just sort of using Barbara and Sucrose interchangeably on the field, so that you can trigger, of course, like the electro charge, the swirls and so on. But of course with Barbara, just getting a bit of like Ocean U Clam and a bit of Taser going as well. Barbara not the best driver for Taser, and obviously the Ocean U Clam set just sort of giving us a bit of a damage uplift here and there. But yeah, this is how you can do it. It might take you a couple of tries to get a decent clearing time, because the enemies can be all over. It is really tricky to manage, but as you'll see, we've done this floor in about 8:45-40, which once again I think is good enough for most F2P teams, because if you can do it in about 8:40, 8:45, you still have enough time to beat up Magokenki with, let's say, a single target F2P focused team like your Rider National or some other variants that you could perhaps want to run. But yeah, there we go, as promised. And now let's go into the final floor. This is perhaps the easiest floor, and I did check my times against someone like Sevi Play. For instance, she cleared this floor with a very offensively heavy team, and she did it about in 9:09. We're going to do it in about 9:13, which for most F2P players, you should then have enough time for the second half. So yeah, this is what this team does. Now, if you've been paying attention, you might have noticed a couple of things. If you don't have the enemies really grouped up well, then you kind of lose that synergy between Barbara and Diona, and then of course you lose out a lot of damage and so on. And of course the other thing is, with Barbara, she has to be on field in order to really get a very high consistency of damage output with her Ocean U Clam set. Now, if we just sort of change out Barbara for Kokomi, you will immediately sort of notice that this won't be the case. So you'll sort of see it here, and of course I'm just going to do this as a single run. As you can see in the bottom right hand corner, we're not sort of recording the best attempt. This is just going to be a single take, so nothing here is going to be optimal. But what I want to show you here with Kokomi is just how easy it is, just how forgiving it is for you to make mistakes with her. And of course, by playing Kokomi and just having a jellyfish on the field, you're automatically just just getting that free ocean ute clam set damage in a very wide AoE with a much higher uptime, and this is what makes Kokomi so well, or such a great character. And also the very fact that Kokomi can synergize much better with Diona in sort of keeping the enemies frozen in AoE wide sort of area, as you can see on screen. And this in and of itself, just this ease of constant AoE wide AoE Hydra application is what makes her so great. And the other thing is, let's say like with this Kairagi, he sort of regenerated to full health. Well, what Kokomi does that Barbara cannot do is actually provide a bit of additional single target support, and hence she can finish him off like very, very quickly, especially if you have like Oz on the field and so on. So as you can see, with Kokomi on the team, we don't need to be so strict in terms of grouping the enemies. We have a higher damage output with the Ocean Ute Clam set. We've got a much more consistent area-wide freeze effect with Diona, and this is just what makes Kokomi great. And this is why I think when a lot of people say, oh, Kokomi is just like a budget Barbara, and yes, people have actually said it, you can clearly see it. They're speaking from a position of ignorance, because when you actually take characters like Kokomi and you put her in teams like this, the difference becomes really night and day. Right, so let's just see now on the second floor. Once again, what you'll notice from me is, well, the first thing is you'll notice the one dinosaur retreated, so we're obviously not going to get him with some of the damage and so on. But what I'm going to do is, I'm just literally going to be lazy. I'm just going to attack random enemies. I'm just going to swirl randomly. I'm not going to be as precise as I was with Barbara, and when we played like with Barbara earlier and so on. I'm just standing here, I'm hitting this enemy, I'm hitting that enemy, but official over here. As you can see, the gameplay is very loose. There's no strict rotation, there's no optimal, there's obviously a very, very optimal way to play and so on, but I'm just relaxing. I'm just sort of abusing the fact that Kokomi has got this AoE wide jellyfish, and this is the other thing, you can trigger like your taser reactions and so on also way more consistently. It's just, Kokomi just keeps on giving. The other synergy that I forgot to mention is that Kokomi and Sucrose can actually sort of launch enemies, and with Kokomi you can keep certain enemies juggled up in the air like consistently. So if you've got a very high health enemy that you can juggle, they can take significant fall damage. And yeah, we've sort of like did a video on this like a while ago. I think a lot of people underestimate the fact that Kokomi has also got this range, and that it enables her to do things like juggle enemies or hit, like, let's say the Golden Wolf Lord or other enemies that, like some of these dinosaur enemies like ruin machines that fly around like that. You cannot actually do with Barbara, because she just has like way much, like her range is just way too limited. But yeah, I mean, obviously if this doesn't convince you, you should probably be convinced by now that Kokomi herself just makes life so much easier. And yes, I know a lot of people might say, but yeah, your Kokomi is a bit stronger than that normal. It really doesn't matter. You can still get the same results. Remember, what I'm showing you here is a single run, whereas the one where I showed you Barbara was actually the best of a couple of runs that I had to take in order to just make sure I can group the enemies well enough, such that the clearing times would be acceptable enough from an F2P perspective. But yes, once again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be extremely lazy. I'm just going to sort of throw abilities on this final floor in any random order, and you guys will see it's just going to be magic. This is the wrong thing. You should not be using Sucrose, because she can just sort of hit the enemies and like spread them out even further, because these Vishaps are very prone to being knocked around. So as you can see, the grouping is completely bad. We've got enemies way over there, we can't see them, and this is just what Kokomi enables you to do. You can be loose, you can have a relaxing time, and look at that, we're just sort of hitting the enemies like very casually. And yeah guys, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you think of this in the comments below. Cheers.